All right. I don't know if anybody can hear me. As I give people some time. Matter of fact, I'll use this instead. And I gotta make sure my mic is good. Hold on a second, people, as I check my systems. Okay, you know we always do mic check before anything else. All right. All right, let me get this in. Let me just adjust the screen. I'm probably gonna do some screen sharing today. This is gonna be a learning experience from what I'm discovering, because this subject matter, as you could tell from the description, had me thinking a little bit. So, like always, I decided to say, let me just pull it up through the assistance of Google on YouTube. And for those who are listening for the first time, welcome. This is Chaos Rain here. And always the people that are the first time listeners or existing listeners, welcome to my channel. And like always, you could comment, subscribe to the channel, and also give like to the video itself. I don't mind when people come in at the first thing, if you can, like the video if you can. I most appreciate it. As you can tell, people are liking already. Not much listeners yet, but we're gonna work with the people that's watching right now. Some little short updates. I will be having Mr. Terrence Miller sometime. A good friend of mine that is a biomedical farmer, and he will be sitting there dropping in some knowledge about how he views health, food, etc. So please be on the lookout for the next stream for that. I'm gonna have him as my next guest. Also, be on the lookout for the premiere of me and Mary Brown in our interview slash I guess topic in regards to fatherhood and a look at the Black collective. That is going to be premiering very soon this week. And be on the lookout for other things. And today's date is, I believe, May the 4th, 2019. Okay. Today's subject, baby boomers, Generation X, Millennials, and Generation Zs. From the chaos perspective, which I will say from my perspective. This is not no call-in show. At the end of every little dissertation I go, I will be dropping the Hangout links in the other, I would say in the Hangout. And always, if anybody wants the link for reflections and their own comments to what has been discussed, please tell me in the chat room right now. Okay. So this is what I will do. Since I'm not going to go back and forth and look at that chat room like that, I'm using my other device. Keep it more balanced out. So 1 second, let me mute myself. And then we will begin. Okay, we can now begin. So let me just switch. All right. And I'm going to go through a bunch of these Google search and give my own perspective of certain things. So I'm going to take my earplugs off for a second. All right, much better. Okay. And the first thing we will be looking at, and let me see if I can share my screen. All right. Okay, I'm not sure anybody can see it, but let me see. Okay, everybody can see it. Good. Okay. And let me get my proper glass. No, actually, I can see this well. As you can tell, this is my look into this. Called Boomers, Gen X, Gen Ys, and Generation Zs. Explain. Now, the purpose of this, because I get confused sometimes about a lot of people talking about saying that we label ourselves Gen Xers or Millennials, besides Generation Z, but usually the distinguishes between the Gen Xers and the Millennials. So what I decided to do is to really pull it up for myself and look at the actual definition, because I hear a lot of people gave me the definitions, but it never settled with me in my mind, because I remember when I took a class, and I think particularly a marketing class, I remember from my own professor, and it was in the book, and I wish I kept that book to sit there for more validation, but the book, from what I remember, said the same thing that I remember a few years ago, almost I think it was almost a decade, maybe less than a decade, that I remember what are the time frames between Generation X and Millennials. So let's read into this. All right. A common source of confusion is when labeling generations and their age. Generational conquerors are defined loosely by birth years, not current age. The reason is simple. Generation gets older in groups. If you think all millennials as college kids 18 to 22, then you are thinking of a stage in life and not a generation. Millennials are out of college, and that life stage is now demanding or dominating by Generation Z. Another example of members of Generation X who turned 18 in 1998, who now be nearly 40 in this time, is he or she cares about vastly different issues and is reciprocal to a new set of market messages. Regardless of your age, you will always belong to the generation you are born into. And which is so true, what we are born into. Because, like always, I always hear that I fall under Generation X. I mean, but then again, when I really check myself, I'm actually really a millennial per se. And I was not born in what we call the 70s, most likely. I was born around the millennial time frame. Now, to give out what it is, I'm gonna let people guess on that. Well, let's continue reading on. Baby boomers. Baby boomers were born between 1944 and 1964. They currently are between the age of 55, 75 years old, or 76 million in the US. Now, mind you, when we talk about baby boom, I want people to get clear about what I mean by the baby boom. It means there was a certain jump in regardless of children being born in the 40s after World War II. Because World War II, I believe, ended in, I think, the year after 44. Don't quote me wrong. If anybody in the chat room could probably give me validation, please put an actual response. I will read shortly. But around that time, that's when you see a surge of children being born. Now, I'm not sure if they're saying European, aka Caucasian people were have a boom in regards to children, but it never gave much validation that, because last time I checked, they started to hit a decline in the early 21st century. I'll tell you one thing that was probably booming more. People that were non-white were booming probably more than the what we call non-blacks. But I'll tell you that. And also in the month and around that baby boom generation, these were the first children born into around television, or they call television, who could afford it. But this is the era where television started to be put, or at least was available to every household. Now we could say some people couldn't afford television back then, some could, some, but this is the time frame or the era where television started to be introduced to people, and they grew up around TV or television. Anybody that has parents that were baby boomers that was fortunate to have a television set or having were good, especially ones that never been around or live around, knowing that they were seeing a TV screen when they first came into this world until they were like a teenager or a young boy or girl. And we all know that most people that start to come around and know that TV or got a chance to watch TV was like teenagers or adults at that time. And those are people that were born in 1920 to 1913. I can't really say much about people that were born in 1910 or 1900 because most of them are already adults at that time. So they would probably be like around either, I would say, touching 30 or 40 years old. One of them time frames. And the ones that were just being teenagers around 1900 to around 1930s. Because the next decade, we were in the 40s, and that's when television started to come into every household. And really, that's where the stage of programming really starts more heavy, is when you start the introduction of television. And mind you, television was a creation, people, back in the 20s. Because everything you see started to come around almost close to 20 years later. Is invented within a decade or close to 2 decades in advance, and then eventually put out in front of regular population in less than 13 to 20 years. So I want people to keep that in mind. All right, let's continue. All right, Generation Y, or what they call millennials, were born between 1980 and 1994. They are currently between 25 and 39 years old. And Generation Y1 is 25 to 29 years old, 31 million people in US. And Generation Y2 is 29 to 39, 42 million people in US. And you see there's a difference between the millions. I think right now we have almost 45 to maybe 46 people in America that's black. And let me go back up, see when this was posted. This is a regular community raised blog, so this is a blog. So we're gonna look at some other blogs, see if there's some consistency between these numbers of who's who. And there's actually, and here's another one, Generation Z. Generation Z is the newest generation to be named and were born between 1995 and 2015. They are currently between 4 to 24 years old, and there's 74 million in the US. The term millennial has become the popular way to reference both segments of Generation Y, more on Y1, Y2, and below. Realistically, the name Generation Z is a placeholder for a youngest people of the planet. It is likely to morph as they leave childhood and mature in their adolescent adult identity. Why are generation named after letters? It started with Generation X, when people born between 1965 to 1979. The preceding generation was the baby boomers born from 44 to 64. Post-World War II, Americans were enjoying newfound prosperity, which resulted in a baby boom. The children born as a result were doubled in the baby boomer. But the generation that followed the boomers don't have a blatant cultural identity. In fact, anecdotal origins of the term Generation X illustrate the undermined characteristics they would come to be known by, depending on whom you ask. It was either sociologists or novelists or Billy Idols who cement the phrase in our vocabulary. From there on, it was all doubled or down by alphabet. The generation follows Generation X naturally becomes Generation Y, born 1980 to 94. Given or take a few years or either end, the term millennials is widely credited to the Neil Hohen along with William Struthus. The pair coined the term in 1989 when the intimate turn of the millennial began to feature heavy in the cultural consciousness. Generation Z refers to baby boomers from the mid 200s through today. Although the term isn't yet widely used, this may signal the end of alphabet soup. It doesn't coincide with the literal end of the alphabet. After all, a flurry of potential labels have appeared, including Generation Tech, Post Millennials, Generational, and Generational YFI. And there's more to this. And I'm not gonna go into too much into the detail. And then see, it gives you another blank statistical graph. Wow. Going to branching. Okay. Okay. And it goes in more depth of the Generation X, and this is what people do. Matter let's read this since they're given in the highlights. The baby boomer generation is used between 1944 and 1964. Current age 54-74. Size 76 million. That's alive. So say. Media consumption, highest consumption of all traditional media like TV, magazines, and radio, and 90% have Facebook. Banking habits, prefer going in branches to do transactions. Both don't get rejected, digital or mobile. Shaping events post World War II, optionism, Vietnam War, and the launch of the environmental movement. What on the financial horizon? Largest group of demographics for student loan debt, balancing children success with retirement goals. And mind you, this is the time where most of them are retired now because they're born on the baby boom era. And let everybody know, most baby boomers, or a good portion of baby boomers, are not really retired, already retired before that. Some of them are still working as we speak. Mostly ones that's born at the end of the 40s, going on 50s. And you can quote me right or wrong on that. You know some people right now that's still working that's already in retirement. And the funny thing, it says here, traditional media TV. Like I said before, TV started to be put in every household in the 40s. So from what I just said, this little blue blip proved what I just said a while ago about about the introduction of TV, and most youngsters that were born in front of a television set that could afford it, mind you. Let's go down. All right, Generation X. Years born 1965 to 1979. Current age 39 years old to 53. Size 82 million. Media consumption, watched an average of 165 hours of television a month. Heavily Facebook users 7 hours a week. Blogs are their favorite forms of content. Banking habits, looking for good rates to manage debt. Branding loyal and believing that banking is a person-to-person relationship. Shaping events, end of the Cold War, rise of personal consumption, feeling lost between two large generations. They ain't lying about that. And what's on the financial horizon? Carrying the highest load of the debt, 142K on an average. Damn, it's a lot. That is a lot. So they balance between eras, Generation X. And it's one of the few last eras that, maybe might remember Big Mama, most likely. And actually grew up with Big Mama too, mind you. Let's keep going. Millennials, Generation Y. 1980 to 1994. Current age, 24 years old to 38. The size, 95 million. Media consumption, 94% still watch TV, but increasingly cutting the cord for streaming options. Mobile is a big, but 32% still use computers for purchase. This is true. Banking habits. Shop products first, want digital tools to manage debt. Functionless, 41% have download a mobile money management app. Shape events, great recession, explosion of internet and social media, and 9/11. What on the financial horizon concurs staggering student debt and beginning to save for wedding and homes? All right, so that's a good sign. The millennials are trying to be homeowners and become wives. So when people say most millennials don't view marriage, not from what I'm reading from this little blogger by Kasha. Let's keep going. And the last but not least, Generation Z. Generation Z, years born, 1995, 2015. Current age, 3 years old to 23 years old. The size, 25% of the population. The largest generation ever. Media consumptions, 41%. Spend at least 3 hours a day online. Most people are mobile. Banking habits, mobile first or only. Shopping events, having Generation X and parents born to country, never not at war, and financial crisis of 2008. Internet available at a young age. What else on the financial horizon? Learning about personal finance and avoidance of debt. Well, I would have to see if that's really true because I know some Generation Zs that still go to college and still are taking on this student loan debt. So I had to question this type of reference because if that was true, a lot of them will not be attending college because a lot of them can't afford college unless they get a actual free scholarship, a grant, or something. But most of them are not going to really take on that heavy load of debt from like the millennials and the Generation X's. And at the end, it's still about banking. Okay, so let me move on to the next one. And here's another one that shows the difference between Generation X and Generation Millennials or Generation Y and Z's. Let me scroll up. And in here, seems to me they say the somewhat similar thing. But let me go back. Because that's not a good reference from what I'm seeing. That's a career planner. Let's see this. Oh, it's the same thing. I'm sorry. I think I clicked onto the wrong one. Let me see. This looks like the same one. Yeah, this is the same one. And the funny thing, when I was clicking onto some of these, some of them were somewhat consistent, but I found one that was totally different. And let's see. I think it might be this one. Oh, I don't know what that is. No, that is not it. Yeah, this is definitely not it. It does say the same thing. So I could, well, let me do this. I'm trying to find the one that I found that split a little different between the two ages. This is Kasha. I read this one already. I'm gonna go down the list. Now, mind you, there's a timeline that kind of shows a little more. The one I was showing was just a breakdown explanation by Casa. Other little blogs and sites said almost the similar thing until I came across this, the one that I remember from my textbook that talks about the split difference between Generation X and Millennials, the actual time frame where it really starts. And the purpose of this is I want people to get a correlation with some of this information that prove, from what I remember I read a few years ago to now, where most people are saying that it start off, you're out of Generation X and going into around the beginning 80s to mid 80s. So I'm just really point out the validation if this is really true. Okay. Now this one right here, it deals with something a little different. And I can't really tell about the accuracy of this one. So I can't go that one. Go back. Let's say there's an image. And I'm gonna go check Wikipedia in a second. I'm gonna show images. Oh, who's this? Oh, I see y'all there. How y'all guys do it on the chat? Hi, Candy. Okay, I gotta find the actual one. Now here, this is the one. This is the one. Okay, I found it. And what site is this? This is Timeline American Generation since 20th century. And this is one of few sources. Oh, this is no longer being updated, so I might have to go back. Can't use this. But let's look at it and see if other articles are similar to this one. As you can tell from baby boomers, we all know it's always consistent from 1960 or 1944 to 1964. This has always been consistent, as people can see from here. As I go down Generation X, I see the same thing. Well, I see something different. And what I mean different is there's one of the difference kind of flaw between Generation X and Millennials that people don't pay attention to. Yes, I said hello, Candy. How you doing? 1965 to 1979. And normally it's cut off through 78, actually. For those who are born in 78. And you know a lot of YouTubers that's born in 78. I think Valdez is born in 78. I think Kendra D is also born in 1978. And the list goes on. So they will be ranged to be what we call Generation X. No doubt. Let's go down. The Millennials, where it starts off in 1979 to 94. And this one, it says from 1980 to 2000. So this one was inaccurate. One inaccurate. It should be from 1979 to 1994. But like I said, this is out of date. So some information that's not consistent. So let's come off this and let's go down. Let's go to Wikipedia. Because Wikipedia, at least they update their shit. Oh, okay. This is the wrong one. Let me go back. That's not the right. That's generation on Wikipedia. And I don't want to make this video longer than it is, but if I have to make a point, I'll try to. Let's go down. As you can tell, you see one thing, me looking at this, there's no consistency from after generation around Generation X and Millennials. This is where the information starts to fall. So I'm getting, from me looking at this now for the very first time, I can see why people said that most people that are Millennials, like yourself, Candy, or anybody else that's born in the 80s, that you're actually considered a millennial around the mid 80s. But as you could check for the information itself, the millennials don't start till just as the 70s end, like 79 onto 1994, which proves my point from the book that I remember I read years ago. From what I'm looking from the computer is giving me, especially Google, different types of breakdowns and different description of errors of what is a Generation X to millennial. And this is important for most people that will look at is that when you go through and look through your reference, you gotta find a correlation which is actually accurate. And I was kind of glad the book had more better accuracy than this. Oh, I'm not sure my screen stopped sharing. Let me see. It'll come back up. So let me go back down. And here's another one, another so-called article. And like I said, they're not giving actual. They're not actually giving actual accuracies. And hold on. So I'm trying. There we go. Okay, I think my jug's almost frozen. Let me go back. Okay. Okay. Is this the one? Nah. There's generations by birth year, another one. All right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm seeing different informations. There's no correlation. The only correlation I see is from baby boomers to close to Generation X. After that, you see a number of indifference between the Gen X and the millennials, which is very alarming now that I think about it. Alarming indeed. So let me go back. I'm just going to click on one more link and see if this is the right one. Oh. Let's go to millennial years. Yeah, it's giving me the same mix up. And it doesn't really give a consistency when it ends, when it begins. As you can tell, as I go through every search engine, it's saying the same thing. So what I could say to conclude, and this is my conclusion to this, to what I remember from the book I read years ago. And I'm gonna soon stop share my screen. Matter of fact, let me check one more link since I'm on here. And the funny thing, they added 1996, which really is Generation Z starts at 95 to 2000 something. Okay, I already looked at that one. Okay. And there's a PDF file. I'm not gonna go into a PDF file tonight because that's gonna probably actually just we're generation matured 89. All right. I think I have enough. I think going through the quick search engine kind of proved my point here. As you could tell, me looking through this, there is no consistency between a Gen Xer and a millennial, which is not surprising because when you Google certain things, they'll give you a reference number. But like I said, nothing beats a good book. Because a good book has better of the information in here. Google search, unless I'm not looking at the right places. And like always, this is my conclusion to all of this. And let me stop sharing my screen. This is my conclusion. And this is not just me running out. This is gonna be a fact that a Generation X starts from 1965 to around 1979. And the millennials start around 79 to 1994. Not end in 95 or 96. It ends around 94. Around 95 to 2015 or going on 2017, that's where we see Generation Z's. And the reason why I'm saying this is because, as you can see when I was doing a quick search engine, all it gives you is mixed numbers between Generation X and millennials. Even they can't even come to a conclusion what it is. It seems that they did come up with some conclusion, but from what I'm looking at and the information I gathered from a recent old book I used to studying, says differently. And I try to correlate the two that it is some consistency. The only consistency I see is baby boomers. But other than that, from Generation X to millennials, it's kind of off a little bit. So most people that fall, that is it, I was born in 1980s, so I'm still Gen Xer. No, my friend, you are now a millennial. Gen X end around the end of the 70s. Once 1980 starts or 1979 going on 1980, you are considered a millennial because you are the introduction and the rise of we entered to the 21st century, which is the millennium. Because if you think about it, after 1980 going on close to the mid 90s, you are in the stage of, once you reach close to 18, 20 years old, you are considered an adult, which you are now entering the stage of the 21st century, which is called millennium. And normally call it Generation Y, but really the term millennials make better sense at the end of the day. And then, Generation Z's are like, youngsters that's born in the mid 90s going on to mid 2010 era. So like always, this is Chaos Reign. This is my perspective of baby boomers, Generation X, millennials, and Generation Z's. Like always, let the chaos Ray.